President requests that proceedings under the quorum call be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. As we are trying to determine whether or not we have a path forward for an energy bill that we've been working on for months, as well as the FAA reauthorization, I thought I would take the time to come to the floor to speak about the importance of this much-needed Federal Aviation Administration reauthorization, recognizing the importance of what the FAA does. It is just a reminder to us that when we delay needed reforms and those initiatives that provide some certainty of funding for airport improvements doesn't help us out here, and making sure that we are attending to these matters in a timely manner is important. I think it's fair to say that all of us in this body travel a fair bit. Most everyone seemingly will fly home to their respective states, visit with their constituents, be with their families on weekends. Some of us that are from further away make efforts to be back home as often as we can. But the distances might complicate it a little bit more. But I think it's fair to say that we see firsthand the inside of many of our nation's airports, and see firsthand those areas where improvements can certainly be made. In my state of Alaska, the airport is, for some of us, almost as common and matter of fact as going to the grocery store. It seems like we're in and out of our small airports so much because it's how we get around. In a state where 80% of your communities are not connected by a road, how do you get there? How do you get to Dillingham? How do you get to Fort Yukon? Well, you can take a boat. You could take a snow machine in the winter. But the fact of the matter is we fly. We are a flying state. And it's not a matter of flying because it's a vacation or a business trip. It is to go see the doctor. It is to go to high school. It is to go to the grocery store, literally to the grocery store. So many of the people in the outlying rural parts of the state will fly to Anchorage so they can shop at Costco. And really, instead of taking luggage back home with them, they take toilet paper and diapers and canned goods and their grocery items. In one community, we have kids that literally, instead of a school bus to get to school, they take a small plane to fly across the river that separates their community from the school. Now, we're working to get them a bridge. Some might suggest that things like these are bridges to nowhere. We think that this is about connecting people, because right now it's pretty limited in our ability to move in and out. So when we talk about flying, for us in Alaska, it is a very matter-of-fact way to travel. And it's pretty no frills. You come from a cold state, Mr. President, and you know that if you and your family are going out on a long trip out on the road, and you're going to be in the high mountains, and the roads might be treacherous and it's cold, you'll be smart and you'll pack some snow gear in the trunk. You might have some emergency supplies there. We do that when we're flying on the airplanes too. Make sure that you've got snow pants and boots on, because sometimes these airplanes are cold, and unfortunately sometimes things happen. But this is a fact of life, and I think the Alaska delegation, we probably log as many miles as any members out there. Perhaps our friends from Hawaii just a little bit more, but it is a part of who we are. And we come to rely on that access with just a pragmatism that perhaps some others don't necessarily appreciate. I can be here at Reagan National, and if a plane is canceled or there's a mechanical, the tension is almost so thick you can cut it with a knife. People are so frustrated. If your flight gets grounded in Alaska, it's like, well, weather set in. My sister lived out on the Aleutian Islands for many years in a community called Unalaska. And when she needed to take her family into Anchorage, some 800 miles or so away for medical care or any other issues that presented themselves so that she would have to go to town, she basically planned for 3 days on either end of her trip because weather just shuts you in. I was in Fairbanks, Alaska, on a field hearing, actually, for the Energy and Natural Resources Committee 2 weeks ago. And it was just a quick day trip up and back, but there was no plane that came my way. In fact, all the planes were grounded in Fairbanks because a volcano blew about 800 miles to the south, and the winds were strong, and picked up the volcanic ash and deposited it all the way from Pavlov volcano down in the Aleutians up to Barrow and down into the interior of Fairbanks. So what do? You don't panic. I was able to spend the night with my sister, catch up on family stuff, rent a car, and drove the 7 hours down to Anchorage the next day. It messed up my schedule, but it's a matter-of-fact part of flying in Alaska. At the end of that week, I took a quick, supposedly, day trip out to Kodiak to attend our commercial fishing symposium. And halfway through the day, weather kicks up again. It wasn't a volcano, but it was pretty tough winds and rain and fog. And while the airport wasn't shut down, the airplanes weren't flying. And so you find a friend's house to go camp out for the evening, and you hope that the skies are favorable the next day. Because you don't want to press the weather, because when you're in the air and you're flying, you want a safe way to be around. Now, I don't tell you these stories to be dramatic about what happens with volcanoes and weather in Alaska, but to really speak to how integral air transportation is to people in my state. A good airport, a reliable flight schedule. This is the equivalent of having a really good road and a good car on the road. And so I look very critically and very carefully at things like the FAA reauthorization, because some of what we deal with in this measure is a matter of, effectively, life safety for many of my constituents, some of whom flight is the only option in my state, live in the small community of Little Diomede. Little Diomede is about 16 miles off the coast of Alaska. It's in the middle of the Bering Strait. You may have heard of Little Diomede because it's 2.5 miles from Big Diomede. Little Diomede is owned by the United States. Big Diomede is owned by Russia. So when you hear that statement about you can see Russia from Alaska, when you are on Big Diomede, that is a true statement. But when you were sitting in this small island community of some 110 people, your hub community for food, for health care, for pretty much anything is Nome, Alaska. That's where you go. And during the summertime, during the time when the ice is not frozen over in the Bering Strait, literally the only way to get in and out is by helicopter, because the island is so small and it's such a peaked island. basically a big rock coming out of the water, there is no flat space for a runway. So you've got a helicopter that provides for medical in and out and basically travel in and out. In the winter, the residents will actually carve a runway into the ice so that planes can land on the ice to deliver essential products, whether it's food or medicine or the like. And sometimes you can't put the runway on the ice because the ice has been so compressed and jumbled, and you have ice ridges that don't allow for a place to land. So again, you're back to helicopter. But the good news for the residents of Little Diomede, and this is thanks to the good work of my colleague, Senator Sullivan, Little Diomede will be joining the other 43 communities in the state that are part of the essential air services, and this will help provide funding to keep the airport open so people can continue to live in a place that they have lived for generations. And really, Mr. President, nowhere in this country is essential air service so vital. And the reason they call it essential air service is because it is essential. In a place like Little Diomede, it is essential. 43 communities in the state of Alaska compared to 113 across the rest of the country. 43 are in Alaska. Many of these locations, again, are only accessible by air. As with Little Diomede, you don't have a road in, you don't have a road out, and it truly does make the word essential, or the phrase essential air service, truly have meaning. Another community that you have heard me speak about at great length, and in fact we're going to be having a hearing focused on King Cove, Alaska. King Cove is a community that is just at the beginning of the Aleutian chain, and this is a community that, again, no road access in or out, accessible only by plane. It is an area that suffers from some very difficult weather conditions because of where it sits on the peninsula, the mountains, the ocean. The dynamics are such that it doesn't allow their small airport to be open for about 1/3 of the year. So think about that. Getting goods in and out, getting people in and out, getting to safety if there is a medical emergency. And there is a small airstrip there in King Cove. It's about 3,500 feet long. It's made of gravel. We have been working to try to get access for the people of King Cove for about 25 years, access to the state's second longest runway, which is over in Cold Bay. We've got an opportunity tomorrow morning in the Energy and Natural Resources Committee to shine a spotlight on this issue, to remind people that since 1980, we've had 19 people die due to plane crashes or injured residents who have waited for a safe way out. Now, I've brought this issue up with Secretary Jewell so many times I can't count it. But she continues to be a blockade and refuse to allow a road to be built so that these people can gain safe passage. Since 2013, there have been 42 medevacs out of King Cove, 16 of them carried out by the Coast Guard. This is one of those examples where if you have people that live in a place where the elements and their geography dictate a level of concern for safety, that where we can provide for safe transportation systems, where we can provide them the access to the best air transportation possible, which is over in Cold Bay, then we should be trying to do just that. The last issue that I want to raise with the FAA bill that is very important is all that is going on with unmanned aerial systems. Alaska is home to one of the 6 official FAA sites for unmanned aerial systems. It's managed by the University of Alaska Fairbanks. The Pan-Pacific UAS Test Range complex is huge. It covers an area from the Arctic all the way down to the tropics. In Alaska, we have 6 test ranges that I think it's fair to say provide some pretty unique range for an opportunity to conduct experiments. And in addition to just incredible range, the Arctic itself offers a unique opportunity for testing our UAS. It's vast, it's remote, you are away from the congestion of the lower 48, you are in different climate conditions, so this is something where Alaska truly has been leading and pioneering, and we're very proud of that. So I am encouraged that this bill requires the Department of Transportation to develop a plan allowing UAS to operate in designated areas of the Arctic 24 hours a day and beyond line of sight. I think that this is important not only from the research perspective, but hopefully for the commercial purposes as well. Mr. President, I think it's fair to say that there is good work, strong work that has gone into this FAA reauthorization. I commend the chairman of the Commerce Committee, Senator Thune, for his leadership with this, and I look forward to its passage in the very short term, and I will certainly stand in support of that measure. With that, Mr. President, I yield the floor.